So you're just starting out and you've formed a band. You want to get out and start gigging, but you see all these other bands with much better gear than you. It's kind of a kick in the nuts. But the question you have to ask yourself is, does it even matter? So I got the inspiration for this video a few months back. I went to go see two bands at a local gig. The first group went on with some crappy bass amp and a couple of Line 6 Spider combos. Yeah, not the greatest tone, that's for sure. And the second band went on with a pair of 5150s, a couple of Marshall cabinets, and a beautiful Gallion Kruger bass rig. The tone was amazing. Now, here's the interesting part. I walked around the crowd and made a startling observation. Do you know how many people were discussing the massive change in the quality of the guitar sound? Absolutely fucking nobody! Let's let that sink in for a second. For all the bullshit we feed ourselves about gear and tone, it makes sense to give yourself a reality check every once in a while and remember who your audience is. If you're in a local band playing small clubs with a shitty PA that has like one vocal mic, chances are nobody who came to see you is going to give a shit about how expensive your amp is. Nobody is going to care about your guitar tone or the fact that you spent $2,000 on an amp modeler that lets you play 40 different amps during one show. Okay, maybe the one or two other guitar players in the audience, but everyone else really doesn't give a flying fuck, you self-indulgent wanker. And that's the thing, when you're starting out, you play what you can afford. And most people starting out just simply can't afford an expensive tube amp. Hell, I started out back in the 80s with this horrible little 80-watt Gorilla. And I eventually worked my way up to a dual rectifier, but that took years. My point being is don't be discouraged by not having the expensive gear. Sure, you might get some grief from some rival band members, but really, their opinion doesn't mean shit anyway. The only opinion that matters is your audience's. They won't care if you have a shitty amp, but they will care if you are out of tune. It's all about recognizing priorities. And when you're starting out, that means writing quality songs. That means working on your live performance. And that's your time to refine how you present yourself on stage. That means practicing your songs, looking out at the audience once in a while, and not running back to your amp to play with the knobs in between every song because there's just something wrong with the sound and that's the reason you're playing so bad. Not because you didn't practice hard enough. No, that never happens. But even as your band gets some experience, high-end gear is still less of a priority. It all comes down to the songs. Let's face it, if you're on the road, expensive gear can be a liability. If it breaks down or is stolen, it can be quite painful to replace. My friend Al Lietti from Gypsy Chief Goliath, killer band by the way, plays some very cheap PV Windsor amps on the road because they're just so easily replaceable. And you can pick them up for dirt cheap on the used market. Now, I'm not saying it's not nice to have nice gear, it is. I'm saying don't get discouraged because of your budget. Don't let that hold you back. Now, when I did the Axe Effect shootout last year, a few commenters went on at great length about how they needed multiple amps to get through a show. To which I say, oh, that is such bullshit. Nobody cares, except for the other guys who own an Axe Effects. But keep telling yourself you're awesome. By the way, that's not a guitar you're holding, that's your dick in your hand. Now, when I was backstage at In This Moment last month, I had a chance to talk to their guitar tech, Cowboy. And they were running a pair of Kempers. And in that situation, it makes a lot of sense. There's no tubes to break, they're far more roadworthy than a tube, and if one does break, you've got a backup. But even with all that capability for multiple amps, they were pretty much just using one amp sim. It was either a 5150 or a Mesa. I can't say for certain, I don't remember. But it was like only one setting. And keep in mind, this was at a gig for 15,000 people. It's a slightly different situation than the dingy basement gig your band is playing for your girlfriends and your parents. But if you're recording in a studio, that's a completely different situation. You want the best tone possible. And any studio that's halfway decent should have a selection of high-end tube amps and good drums for your band to play on. But live, don't sweat it. People came to see you, not a logo on your backline. But for those of you who have to deal with an obsessive-compulsive guitar player in your band, I finally got a shirt for you guys. 40 different amp simulations during your show does not make you a great guitar player. It makes you an asshole. I've got those on sale now at spectremedia.ca/shop. Okay,